let's talk more about sound. It is a sonic art class after all. So, you learned about sine waves last week and how they relate to the unit circle and how they're essentially just circles unwrapped in time. Um, we also talked about last week how any sound can be analyzed and broken down into a series of sine waves at various frequencies, phases, and amplitudes, changing, of course, over time, but that any sound can be analyzed in that way. Sine waves essentially are the fundamental building block of all of sound. Sine waves also are one of the most important tools and sounds within sonic art and electroacoustic music. One of the early ways of generating sound synthetically was with sine wave generators or oscillators. An oscillator is used to be some sort of analog device that would create a periodic, that is a repeating, some sort of signal with a repeating pattern in time. And so these sine wave oscillators would create sine waves at various frequencies and amplitude. And so I want to make sure that you have the experience of working with a very basic sine wave oscillator and seeing how we can start to create complex pieces with such a simple concept. So we're going to move over to Reaper here. And we've installed those plugins from the previous page. So we're going to pull up an instance of that tone generator plugin. I've got a blank track here. Ignore this. This is for later. So we're going to click FX, and I'm going to pull up a tone generator, a VST version of it, and add that. Now we have our master fader at Unity, and then this track at Unity, and let's label these tracks so we know what's going on here. Sine 1. And you'll see within this plugin, there's a number of options. But what we're going to do first actually is pull up a couple analysis plugins as well. So over in our master fader, I'm going to click on the first FX spot. And we're going to scroll down here to analysis, analyzer. Oh, I need to delete this. I apologize. Oh, and actually, I forget. We need to go to a different thing because I have other plugins installed. So we're going to go to JS. And JS, JavaScript plugins in Reaper are a series of coded plugins that people can create for Reaper. And there's quite a few very interesting ones. And we're going to pull up two things. We're going to pull up an oscilloscope. So this oscilloscope meter, JS oscilloscope meter, we're going to add that. And then we're also going to pull up a spectrogram meter. Great. Oh, and then we'll grab that one as well. So we're also going to grab a frequency spectrum analyzer and the spectrogram meter. Wonderful. We now have 3 different analyzers here to help us analyze and visualize what's going on with our sound. And we'll leave those up top. I'll move them over and just change their size a little bit here. Great. Now back to our tone generator or sine wave generator. So the first thing you'll notice is there's this button here, enable. Obviously, if it's off, it's not going to create anything, but it is kind of a backup if you need to make it quiet really quickly. There's this band limit, and we're going to turn that off for the time being. Band limit, essentially, if we go beyond the usable frequency range of a digital system, it will filter out those frequencies above or below that usable range. We'll get to more of that in a different class. This lower left button here, or knob, is frequency. This is going to allow us actually to set the frequency of our tone generator. Now, this is called a tone generator, not just purely a sine wave oscillator or anything, because it has a number of different tones that you can generate at the specified frequency. There is the sine wave. There's also a saw wave, a triangle wave, a saw down wave, a square wave, and then just general noise. So we'll talk about those a little bit later, but let's first put this at a nice frequency. We'll go, we're just going to enter it in here. I like 200. Great. And if I pull up the amplitude of the sine wave generator, we'll start to hear it. And of course, we can see in our fader that we're currently at a value of negative 13.1. We see our sine wave in our spectrum analyzer. So this shows the spectrum at a single moment in time. In our spectrogram, we're going to hit scroll in the bottom left here, and this shows the spectrum over time vertically. And then we have our oscilloscope, which is a time domain-based representation of the current wave, matching this sine wave. If I change the frequency, we see our analysis change, and we also hear that different frequency. So as we mentioned last week, a sine wave is the most basic building block of all of sound. These other waves are versions of sine waves, just a whole bunch of sine waves added together in various relationships. And the name of them describes the shape that is created. So a saw wave up, you'll immediately start to recognize. It is called a saw wave because of the saw-like shape that it exhibits. And if I pull this down and bring the saw down up, you'll notice it is the opposite of that. Let's hear this. Sound pretty similar. A triangle wave looks like a triangle. And a square wave looks like a square, series of squares. And then this final one is noise, which is just white noise. So that's stochastic values of every sample between 1 and -1. So we're going to unmute this and we can listen to a couple of these back to each other. So here's the sine. Sorry about that. Here's the saw. And you can notice actually the frequency makeup of this saw wave on the spectrum analyzer and the spectrogram. So the band limit is useful on these more complex waves because it actually limits, mathematically, these waves go on way beyond the usable range of the digital system. And what happens then is they essentially fold back down once they get to that level. Again, we'll talk more about this in a later class. So with band limit on, it's going to change, it's going to filter out essentially those frequencies that are going beyond the usable range. So if we have our square wave example here, and I turn band limit off, you can hear and see in the spectrogram the additional noise that was created. Again, if I turn it back on, notice how much cleaner the spectrum analyzer got, and notice how much cleaner our spectrogram got. So that could be an interesting creative tool if you want to use it potentially. That's the reason I bring it up. Okay, we're going to bring our square wave down, and we're going to turn our sine wave back up, and we'll unmute it. I'm going to create another track. I'm going to add another instance of the tone generator. There is also a JavaScript tone generator, but it's not as smooth, which is the reason why I wanted us to get this other one. So I'm going to use the VSTI tone generator, add. Then we're going to bring it down so we can look at it as well. We'll switch them around so they're organized left to right like they are in the mixer. We'll set this to, let's do 300. And same thing, we'll set this one to 300. We'll turn up our sine wave to the same level, negative 14-ish. Great. And now if we change the frequency a little bit, you you can begin to play with those perceptual characteristics we were talking about last week. We can also go really high, test our range of hearing. Because these are in a DAW, so we've got some phase cancellation going on right now, which is interesting, huh? Wonderful. All right. Because these are in a DAW, let's do away with our analyzers right for a while. You can always click on them down below if you want to pull them back up. We can also, of course, compose in real time. So let's pull up trim here, and we're going to go for this trim, and then I'm going to add frequency line. I'm going to do the same thing here, frequency line, and I'm going to add in some points. So we'll go add a point there, add a point there, and I'm going to turn off grid. And we're just going to bring them apart from each other a little bit so that we can hear that in time. And you know what, actually? I'm going to move them back. We'll add the 2 more points down here at 8 seconds. And then we'll add some points here in the middle. And we'll pull those up and down respectively. And then we're going to play this from the beginning. Oh, there's my transport. Wonderful. So you can start to play with sine waves or any other wave in relationship to each other. This is a fundamental skill and technique in sonic art, electroacoustic music, digital music. These sine waves are something that there's been a ton of music and a ton of interesting art that's been created with just basic sine waves. They can do so much. And so I really want you to take some time this week and explore these. And one more tool I'm going to show you on the next page together, which I find is another basic and critically important tool of sound art. I take it back. I've got one more thing I want to show you. Okay, remember this track that I had hidden? So let's mute these other 2 tracks. And we'll pull the volume down on this one. And we're going to actually pull up all of our things again here, and then we'll pull up the 3 tone generators that I had on that track. So there's all kinds of stuff going on now, but that's okay. Okay, so notice I've got band limit off on all of these. The first one I've got set to 30 hertz. The second one I've got set to 18,386 hertz. And the third one I have set to 19,724 hertz. And that should be well above the range of our hearing. Let's open up this tone generator really quick. And we'll keep it right there. So we'll turn this on. And we're going to leave band limit on. Somewhere above that point, certainly above 18,000, probably you should start to be able to lose the ability to hear that frequency. If you can't, then you're doing really well and good for you. But so the point of that is that these 2 oscillators are set well beyond the range of normal human hearing at this point. Likewise, notice that I've added a combination of the sine, saw up, saw down, triangle, and square to each of these. So and the band limit is off, so there's going to be a lot of fold back down on these. And I just want to play a little bit for you so you can hear what this sounds like. Right, and if we move it around, we're getting some absolutely crazy phase cancellation occurring. All right, so let's turn the volume down. Let's go back to the beginning here. And now I'm going to actually turn on automation to latch. We're going to move this back. And I'm going to hit play. Now we're going to turn up our volume. And then we're going to play a little bit. Great, stop. Play. And we're going to play again. And we're going to play one more time here. Great. And notice, whoops, stop. And notice, stop. So, and notice, of course, that there is some clipping going on, so we would need to go back and fix that. But this is just an example where it can be fun to actually just start playing with some of these oscillators and tone generators together and seeing what you can come up with. Okay, now I'm done.